Hey job seekers, hi. Today we are going to talk about something that we're going to need our trusty highlighter for. What we're going to talk about today is how to analyze job keywords. There are a couple of different ways to do it. The first one is very analog. Get a highlighter, a couple of different highlighters in different colors and a couple of colored pens, and you go through and you start marking repeated words. One particular word like manage might be repeated 7 or 8 times. Another word might only be repeated twice, but I write down all the repeats. Then I look at the wonderful patchwork colored resume I have in front of me and look for the spaces that are still white and see if I can find any unusual single phrases that are very specific, perhaps a little bit special, that give me a real key to the kind of language that they use. I examine it a little more simply, and then you need one pen for this purpose. I look for groups of words. I look, for example, how many times is there a word or a phrase that refers to time management? These are phrases like fast pace, timely manner, under pressure, anything that talks about deadlines or time or how quickly things have to be done. And I make a note. I count how many that is. Then I look for words and phrases that reference things like multitasking, and I make a note of those. Then I look for phrases that might reference money in any way. Words like budget, invoices, vendors, sales, all these things that have to do with money and budgeting, and I write those down. Sometimes there aren't any. That's an important thing to note. So then I look at that and I say, oh, well, things to do with time are mentioned half as often as things to do with finances and budgets and managing financial spreadsheets and writing expense reports. Those abilities and skills are more important than time management, but time management is still important and that sort of thing. I like to get a broad feel for the job listing by doing that. Then the last thing that I do is I try to see what is missing. Are there any words about team, collaboration, working with? Is that mentioned? Is it not mentioned? Is there stuff about data entry or not stuff about data entry? Is there a focus on sitting at a desk, or is there a focus on interacting with people? Do they talk about meetings? Do they talk about events? It's very important to do that so that you get a real feel for what the job truly is. And understanding the main pain points of that hirer, what they chose to emphasize in their job listing. It may not even be that those are the biggest parts of any particular job. It might be that those are the things that are on the mind of the person who wrote that job listing the day they wrote it, because the last person that had that job wasn't good at that particular aspect of the job. So they really want to make sure they don't get burned a second time with someone who's not good at that, so they emphasize it more. Now, the other way that you can do this repeated things that I've come to find is actually quicker is to throw this away and go ahead and copy and paste the entire job listing into a Word document and use the find feature. And that way you can find words, how often they're repeated, and some of the little variations of them as well. Managed, managing, managed, management. Count those that way, and that's actually a lot quicker. You use the replace feature and replace it with, I find a word, I replace it with nothing, and then at the end I'm left with a lot of the single words and unusual phrases that are easier to pick out from the listing. But I still do the overview, the counting, the categorized words. I still do that by hand. So that's what I recommend you do with every job that you are particularly interested in. You want to be able to customize your resume by including those keywords. That's what the customizing is. It also gives you an idea of what's important to emphasize in your cover letter. You can tell a story about, for example, the time you succeeded in using the skills of time management very well, for example. The other really important reason to do this is that it's not just a matter of you being the right candidate for that job. It's a matter of the job being the right fit for you and your career and where you want to go with it. You should be vetting the company just as much as they are vetting you. I mean, what if you got it? You've got to be happy at it, right? Now, I will say to you, please subscribe, ring that little bell, and come back for more stories and tips and tricks. See you soon.